Good evening. I'm Catharine Richert. You're listening to NPR News. Before we get to tonight's show, I want to tell you about our winter member drive. It starts today, and we're taking a different approach. Programming will not be interrupted to fundraise. Instead, this newsroom is focused on keeping you connected while the news changes rapidly each day. We are committed to keeping Minnesotans informed, and your support is more important than ever. Please start or increase your sustaining donation today. Give now at nprnews.org or 800-227-2811. During increased federal immigration operations in Minnesota, a lot of what the public is seeing is coming from individuals. These are reporters and content creators on the ground, and they have large followings on social media. They're using social media to spread their videos and live dispatches from Minneapolis and St. Paul to a very wide audience. And about 1 in 5 U.S. adults say they regularly get news from news influencers on social media. That's according to the Pew Research Center. And according to the same study, nearly 40% of younger adults ages 18 to 29 are likely to get news from news influencers. These influencers often do a great job of engaging people who've tuned out the news, and part of their appeal is their authenticity. They can feel like they're smart online friends. But they aren't associated with a traditional newsroom, and it may not always be clear how they fact-check information. Still, like traditional news outlets, creators want to give their audience access to good, helpful information. So this hour, we will talk to 2 news influencers who have been documenting the Trump administration's ICE enforcement in the Twin Cities since the start. And we'll talk about what it means to report on ICE activity on your own, and how the content we're seeing online is informing a broader discussion about the immigration crackdown in Minnesota. And we'll also talk about what we can learn from each other to help our audiences have access to ethical, accurate, and helpful information. My guests tonight are Andrew Mercado. He is the founder and editor-in-chief at Mercado Media. That's an independent news platform based here in Minnesota. He is also a U.S. Army veteran who served as a motor transport operator for 10 years. Thanks for being with us, Andrew.
Thank you so much for having me.
We also have JT Cestkowski. He is a reporter from Status Coup News. Thanks for being with us, JT.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay, so we want our audience to join this conversation. We want to know where you're getting your information right now, what videos or posts have shaped how you understand what's happening in the Twin Cities, and how you decide what and who to trust. Give us a call at 651-227-6000 or 800-242-2828. Okay, Andrew, I want to start with you. You've been on the ground documenting ICE enforcement here. You live here since it started. Mm-hmm. What have you found is resonating most with your audience right now?
Just the fact that we're able to get on scene, relatively quickly because, we're out there, we're connected to the community. We also have, I say we because me and JT, but, I have experience even going to last year to Broadview, Illinois, which is where I first met with Status Coup, who had been there for months, and we just kind of learned, a technique to, we stay away from what they're doing. We're not impeding with the federal officers, but we have a First Amendment right to document what the federal officers are doing in our cities, and that's all we're doing. So we do consistent journalism. We're able to get there on time, and we're able to provide firsthand documentation of what is exactly happening. And for me, a lot of that has been through live stream. So, I'm live with it. I'm just now starting to do video clips, but the majority of my content has been live. So people are able to tune in immediately to see what this operation has been like.
Yeah, and I want to get back to the idea of live streaming a lot of this in a few minutes. Now, JT, you're not based here in Minnesota, but you have also been documenting ICE enforcement here and in other parts of the country. How did you end up in Minneapolis?
It was the next logical step for us. We had been on the ground in Washington, D.C., in New York, in L.A., in Chicago, as Andrew mentioned, in Charlotte, for all of the immigration and other enforcement efforts in all of those cities. And then when we were watching Border Patrol agents go to New Orleans at the same time that they were going to, at the same time Operation Metro Surge was beginning in Minneapolis, we kind of had a split in the road. We're a small newsroom of about 6 people, but we punch above our weight, and we had to make a decision about where we wanted to allocate resources. And when we looked at the strategies that were being implemented by the Trump administration in both cities, we decided that we felt that based on what we had seen in other cities, that we thought that it was going to the enforcement strategies would be far more intense in Minneapolis. And we've been on the ground there in one form or another for for about 2 months now, since early December. Aside from a few days break around the holidays, we have been continuously on the ground there. And while I am back home right now, my cameraman, John Farina, is there right now still documenting what ICE is doing to the people of the Twin Cities area in the state of Minnesota.
Okay, so I want to back up a little bit and just learn more about the news organizations that you work for. Andrew, I'm going to start with you. You own Mercado Media.
Correct.
Tell us more about it. How do you decide where to post content? How do you decide what to cover? Because you don't just cover ICE enforcement in the Twin Cities.
No. So, I had started when George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, and I just had a Facebook page. I didn't have a media company or any type of platform for news media. It was just what I could do with my live stream. So over time, I ended up covering more protests, riots, and then protests. And I stuck with it, ended up building a bigger platform out of it. And then I just went from covering the protests in the Twin Cities, and then I covered Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And then through my connections that I make, and I guess just the community that I've been able to build personally, I'm able to get to the scene and able to get there. So I was able to go to Ukraine 5 times, over the last 3 years.
And was that the result of some connections you had with, you used to be in the Army, right? Was that connected to that?
Some of my abilities that I've been able to develop, I can directly, correlate to my Army training for sure. Because we had to drive in convoys from Estonia to Ukraine. And, there's civilians involved, there's training that I have that I was able to use to help me through that.
Yeah.
So, through that, but that also translates to my reporting as well. I'm able to be more confident in chaotic situations. In Ukraine, that's the largest war since World War II. It's just, you're experiencing a lot there. So after that had taken place, I'm just covering just the flow of the country. I want you personally, my personal opinion, I just wanted you to support Ukraine. So covering the Trump administration was kind of like what was next for me. So I had been covering the protests last year, the No Kings protest, No Kings 1, No Kings 2, multiple. And then it just turned into, okay, these federal raids are starting to take place. I should start covering these. And that's when I was able to start going to Chicago and covering what the Border Patrol was doing there in Broadview. And I also covered the protests outside of there because I had experience covering protests back from 2020. So, I just kind of used what I'm comfortable with between covering war and then also protests. And I feel like all of that's able to help me right now cover what's going on with these federal raids.
Yeah. And JT, what about you? Tell us more about Status Coup and how many people work there, where you post and what platforms you use the most.
We're primarily on YouTube. That's where we have our largest following. Status Coup has been around in one form or another now for several years. It was formed by my boss, Jordan Sheridan, who used to be a reporter for the Young Turks. He started his own venture and has been, really has become a celebrated investigative journalist in his own right, built this organization from scratch and has now built it as we are growing very quickly. He brought me on in September of last year as a on the ground reporter, and we've basically doubled our size here over the last year, and we're still looking to hire more. So we have it depends how you count our team exactly. I count it as about 6 people, but like I said, we're still growing. We're adding more to that all the time, and we've gotten a lot of love from people over the coverage that we've been able to offer, in all of those cities that I referenced earlier, where we've been on the ground, especially in Minneapolis. That's helped facilitate that growth. People do seem to get a real value out of both the live reports that we do and the videos we produce.
If you're just joining our conversation, we are talking about what it means to be an independent journalist covering ICE enforcement in Minnesota. We want to know, where are you getting your information right now? What videos or posts have shaped how you understand what's been happening with ICE enforcement in Minnesota? And how do you decide what or who to trust? Join our conversation. Call us at 651-227-6000 or 800-242-2828. I want to go to a call now from Leah in Mankato. Leah, what do you want to share with us?
I just want to give out a shout out to Mercado Media. I literally watched the first Jake Lang protest, whatever you want to call it, and watched for hours as that man just did some amazing work. And I got to see something that I'm not going to see from out here. And just a shout out to them.
Leah, if I can follow up, okay, just to make sure our audience knows, Jake Lang is a conservative internet personality who was here. There was a protest. This was sort of, almost it feels like a million years ago, but this was in January. And he was, sort of there to. Yeah. Okay. Sure. That sounds right. But Leah, I'm wondering, you live in Mankato. That's, southern Minnesota, for those who are listening who don't know our geography here. What was it about being able to watch this in real time that appealed to you?
Honestly, I have family. I grew up in Minneapolis. I have family there. Like, I'm looking for my family members who might be on the fringes. We're older. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I just so appreciate him just being there with that camera and to see what happened. And I have family that live in the Netherlands, and they are so damn proud of Minneapolis. And that's what that put out there. Like, just standing up. Like I said, I got live without being able to be there. And
Andrew, I want to get your take on this, because it's one, like, TV, radio for sure, it takes you there, but rarely is it sort of this constant live stream. I mean, what is it about that format do you think is appealing to your audience?
I think it's just the ability to see something in real time. I mean, I only have maybe a 30-second delay maximum between something that's happening and then what the viewer is able to see. But then I also, because I know I play video games and I'm more connected to a younger culture of live streaming, I connect to my audience as well. So, I'm not just streaming, but I'm also reading my chat. I'm engaging with it so I can tell them something. Maybe they want to know what's going on that they can't see, but I can. So it's just kind of like a really transparent form of media to where I can engage with my viewers and then they can see what's happening in real time.
Yeah. And okay, so I want to get, JT, your take on some news over the weekend, which is all of these arrests that happened at the Whipple building. As just a reminder, the Whipple building is where people who've been arrested by federal agents are then taken and detained. There have been a lot of protests there. Can you help me understand how Status Coup sort of covers an event like that? You had your camera person there, is that right?
Yeah. Our cameraman, John Farina, was there and was live streaming that as it happened. As far as my take on it, I mean, what we saw there is part of a pattern that has played out in city after city now that we've covered. Especially, I think it's such a direct comparison to what happened in Chicago. The events in Minneapolis have really followed that quite closely, unfortunately, with more deadly results. But what we saw outside of the Whipple building was local state authorities essentially acting as de facto security for the federal government and arresting many protesters who are there, committing acts of civil disobedience, not unlike, as has happened over and over again in our history as a country, including things like the civil rights movement. There have always been people trying to get into good trouble, so to speak, to stand up for what they believe is right. And here we see, their own tax dollars being used against them, sometimes in the form of the federal government tear gassing them, and sometimes in the form of state and local police arresting them for daring to stand up against something that I think most people should be able to objectively see as wrong, the ripping apart of these communities and these families.
We have Sam in Andover on the line. Sam, what do you want to share?
Hey, I just want to say thank you to you guys and NPR. I am an immigrant here in Minnesota. And since all of this has started, it's been scary. But you guys have been the ones who have shown us what's really going on. And it's helped us, I think, speaking for all of the immigrants here, it's helped us really understand how to navigate, how to protect ourselves, know where to go, where not to go. And I just want to thank you because it's scary out here for us. And even though you are feeling you might be here legally, you've done everything right, you're still being targeted. And you guys really have helped those of us who have to worry about that understand what's really going on. And so we appreciate you guys. We appreciate NPR News. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sam. If I can keep you on the line, I just want to ask a follow-up question because, I see the ways that we report things at NPR, different from how JT is doing it, which is different from how Andrew's doing it. But why do you trust us? What is it about what we're doing that makes us, all three of us, a trustworthy source of information for you?
Well, I've actually been listening to you guys since I've lived in Minnesota. I've been here for over 25 years. So honestly, I've watched you guys navigate so many places with high integrity, great reporting, just honest community-based work. And that's something that I value. I've listened to you guys. I've had my kids listen to you guys. So you just have been a part of how I've grown to call myself a Minnesotan. You've taught me some things about where I live, And then when I think about, regardless of how you present the news, you're always giving different facets, different views of how things are being carried out or reported, and so all three of you combined provide just such a well-rounded view for me, particularly. I can't speak for everyone, so you're trustworthy to me.
Thank you, Sam. I mean, this gets at a bigger question that I have for both of you, JT and Andrew, which is, we are inundated with information all the time. Even as journalists, we have to sort through what's real and what isn't. How do you attribute where you get your information from? How do you do your fact checking? And Andrew, I will start with you. What's your process there? Definitely.
So for me, it's firsthand sources, people that are either on the ground, that are there, that is connected to a community because it's things have happened either across the country or in another or across the world in Europe. So rely on firsthand reporting, maps, geolocations. I mean, the flight radar app. Like if you're trying to figure out what's in the sky, there's open source tools that are available that that I use personally. And then just able to geolocate things. Just to fact check stuff. But also credible information, credible reporting. And I feel that is developed over time, right? Because you could come across a writer for the first time and you might not know, how they write articles. Say over time, you keep reading some more of their writing and you're like, okay, this is true, because you got to really do some other fact checking yourself if you're a reader or you're a listener, or you're a viewer, which is absolutely fine. But people build credibility themselves, and then they can work for a network, and then you could really like that network. But for me, it's just credible news sources that are there either on the ground or have people on the ground that are connected to the story that, can provide something of value or utilize tools to my ability to provide facts when I can't be there on the ground, or at least tell people how to get the facts on the ground and relay news sources like Status Coup.
So it's almost like you're crowdsourcing some of the work. It sounds like a little bit like you're sort of handing the mic over to people who are actually there to help tell these stories.
Absolutely, and because I have a platform, they find out about it, and it kind of like if you're in like a a news, system-ish, I guess. I don't want to say system, but like, other journalists, that really does kind of pay it forward. Like they'll hear about you shouting them out, and then down the line, they might set something up for you. You know what I mean? And like, it's not that you're looking for that. It's just, things can happen, if you really give in or give into, what's trying to be good journalism out here.
And JT, what about you? What is the fact-checking process, and how do you distinguish? Do you see a distinction between news or informational content versus opinion on your website?
We distinguish, but when I think it's pretty clear when we're giving our opinion versus when we're presenting bona fide, just on the ground information. We practice all the same things that Andrew just talked about: the crowdsourcing of information, the open source intelligence. Andrew started to talk about it there, but our partnerships with other journalists that we have. We have networks of other reporters when we go into cities in this case, it's Andrew's home city. So he's been doing a lot of the coordinating for us, and we're insanely grateful for the effort that he has put forward to really get a lot of good information out to a lot of people, not only in the Twin Cities area, but across the country through the work and networks that Andrew's built up. But we rely on those systems of journalists. We're all sharing information because even though we are at a certain point in competition with each other, we recognize that what we're doing here ends up putting us in harm's way a lot of the time. So when we all work together, it keeps us all safer and helps us all get the story where we might struggle individually. Together, we're working together. So there's a lot of pooling of resources between all of our different organizations to present the facts from that on the ground perspective. I think that what we're hearing so far from these callers is not surprising to me. The idea that people just feel a connection to myself and Andrew and even NPR News, because these are, Andrew is streaming for hours at a time. We will stream for hours at a time at Status Coup, and you can always turn on the radio and listen to NPR at any time. So I think it's just that constant familiarity. It's not just somebody who it's that parasocial relationship that people have built up with us. Our names mean something. We are not just a logo that, might exist for a lot of other corporate outlets. It is, us personally, and our personal reputations are on the line with the information that we present. And as far as, you kind of start to get towards that idea of when you ask about the division between our presenting of opinion versus fact, I think that there is a classical idea of what unbiased reporting looks like in this country over the last several decades, and that is unfortunately built out of a largely corporate funded news system. Whereas when we're able to call out things for, what we would see as objective right and wrong, we're able to call that out and present it as fact that I think most lay people would see as objective, right and wrong as well. And when we are able to validate, what they're seeing with their own eyes as something as being wrong, I think that it just makes them trust us more, that we're willing to call a spade a spade.
Well, this gets at, you talked about sort of that traditional model of journalism, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, JT, but I think what you're getting at is this idea that you have to kind of give both sides equal weight in a story. Is that kind of what you were getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that this idea that the tens or hundreds of thousands or even potentially millions of people in Minnesota, them crying out saying, please stop victimizing our state, our communities like this. Please stop inflicting this pain. Please stop killing our friends and neighbors. That anguish and that large people power voice is in any way equal to what just a few voices in this presidential administration, as if that those are two equal sides in some way. I mean, it's false on its face, and I think to most people it rings as false, that just because Stephen Miller, the president's deputy chief of staff, wants a cruel immigration policy, that does not mean it should be treated with the same weight as the tens of thousands of people who have taken to the streets in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities area, that there should probably be a treating this of, okay, we have a people-powered movement on one side. It should probably be given greater weight because it is of greater weight.
Well, JT, I feel like there's some people who are going to listen to this and they're going to hear what you're saying and think, well, is that any different from activism? And I feel like that's a good question to explore here. Is this different from being an activist?
Yeah, I think it's distinctly different from being an activist. I am not doing any organizing for this. I am just going to these places, the same as Andrew, the same as any other journalist, and showing what is happening there. The only difference is I'm not afraid about losing advertiser dollars by being, cowed into saying that or acting like what is happening on the streets of Minneapolis is in any way might have any sort of legitimacy or pretending that there isn't a moral right and wrong here. I think it, like I said, I think it just lends authenticity to what we're delivering. I am not out there actively encouraging people to, vote a certain way. I'm just making people aware of this is what is actually happening on the ground in these places.
And that actually, you raised an interesting point, and I want to hear from both of you. How do you support yourselves? You talked about not having to worry about advertising dollars, JT. Could you just help me understand how Status Coup makes money? And then also, Andrew, I'm curious to know what your financing model is, too.
Yeah, Status Coup is 100% funded by our viewers. It's people who are giving $5 a month at a time, a few bucks a month, or even sometimes it's just people they chip in, they'll send us $2 because that's all they can that month. And they just really believe in the work that we're doing. And that's insanely humbling. And in that way, we're not that different from a public nonprofit news organization, not unlike NPR News, or based in Wisconsin, so I know at least WPR here. We're not all that unlike it, except it's just entirely people funded. So when I'm talking to my audience, I can tell them without a shadow of a doubt that what I'm saying is my real opinion because I'm only beholden to them. I'm not beholden to any corporate interests, like if you were to flip on the evening news on your television or try to get your news from any other corporate outlet, that they do have advertisers that they need to please at the end of the day, or billionaire owners who are going to go in and influence what their opinion and editorial and news sections are covering in their papers or whatever outlet.
Andrew, I want to hear from you, and then we have a lot of people waiting to talk to you. So we'll get to these calls here in just a minute. Andrew, how do you support yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So it's just the connection I have with my community. It's the exact same as JT just laid out with Status Coup. 100% viewer funded. I don't even have a sponsor yet. I would like to work on that eventually, but right now I'm comfortable. I mean, I'm not. That's not something I really push forward. But yeah, it's through YouTube. There's enough money there with ad revenue, and same with thing on social media. I get ad revenue there, but also people send super chats or or on Twitch. The Twitch Prime sub memberships, et cetera, and that does add up. It's maybe $1, $2, but if you got 200 people doing that, et cetera, that does, I'm able to support myself doing that. And then any big projects, there's Buy Me a Coffee, or there's, people PayPal, Venmo, or whatever, and people can support that way if there's an immediate project. But also really quick on the activism part, I just wanted to mention too, it almost feels too like in this administration that we're under, that any form of honest journalism is activism now. Right. Whereas I 100% agree with JT. Whereas we're not organizing anything. We're just highlighting the people that are organizing. And, because a lot of what we do is live, we're just on the ground covering exactly what's happening. I do feel like we do get an opinion, because we're out there, we're doing the work to provide the firsthand documentation of what's happening. And because we also provide our opinion sometimes, that makes us seem like we might be activists because we might agree with that specific protest or whatever, or maybe not, But, right now it does feel that under this administration that truthful journalism, no matter what, is a form of activism now. And it's getting weird now. It's getting weird out here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We have lots of calls here. I want to go to Jim in St. Paul next. Jim, what do you want to share with us?
Just that, there's, it's hard to put this into words. I have a long career in public safety, and I do believe that our law enforcement is out there to keep the peace. I've seen the undisciplined tactics of the feds, and I kind of feel bad for the cops because they're trying to keep the peace, and I think they're kind of getting, they're not getting the credit or the information of exactly how they're doing what they're doing and why. I think that the live streams are incredibly important. I watched a lot of Unicorn Riot during the Philando Castile demonstrations, and I certainly watched a lot of Mercado during the riots in 2020. And I realize there's
Jim,
always going to be bias.
Good.
Just that I think every journalist has bias. It's just a question of, I guess, even-handedness and admitting your bias, but willing to get the other side of the story.
And I feel like maybe what I'm hearing you say is you might be more likely to trust someone if you sort of understand where they're coming from, if they're upfront about. Is that fair?
Well, yeah. I mean, like a lot of the publicity around the Hennepin County Sheriff had to do with her cooperation in the jail, as opposed to asking questions about the tactics that they're using out at the Whipple building to keep these two sides separated, and that when you cross the line from demonstration and civil disobedience into illegality, how and why they did what they did to affect 42 arrests out at Whipple.
Okay.
And all of
Thank
those
you so
arrests,
much, Jim.
I believe.
Okay. I think we've lost Jim there. Okay. I want to go next to William in South Minneapolis. William, what do you want to share?
I just want to say that, when I want to find out what's happening on the ground in Minneapolis, I don't go to Fox 9. I don't go to the local news media. I go to Andrew Mercado. I go to frickin' Status Coup because they're on the ground. They stay on the ground. No matter what's happening, they stay live. They keep us informed. We can always find out what's happening in the city as far as whether it be resistance or whether it be like the crazy things that the federal government are doing to our city. We can find it out immediately from them at all times. No one is better. No, they are the gold standard of live stream reporting on the ground, keeping us updated on what's happening.
And William, it sounds like it's almost like a PSA for you. It's like a public safety thing. If you're heading out, like you kind of want to know maybe what's going on near where you live right now. Is that fair?
I can tell you that thousands of families across the Twin Cities are constantly listening and following, and Mercado Media, Cortez Rice, and Status Coup, because they know that these guys are on the ground. They're seeing what's happening live action. They're not being lied to like the mainstream media has always done.
Okay. Thank you so much, William. This gets at something that I have thought about a lot watching some of the content you both create, which is safety, right? We've seen protests clearly get fatal and violent very quickly over the last couple of months. It's also been incredibly cold. Andrew, I'm just wondering, like when you are going out there, what are some of the safety precautions that you're taking to make sure that you can continue that live stream for people?
Yeah, well, it depends on the environment. Like, when Greg Bovino was here, I wore my body armor a couple times. Helmet, respirator, earplugs. It really depends on the situation, and you're going into it. Like I said, when Border Patrol was around, you had everything on you. Right now, it's like, protests are peaceful downtown completely. There's no Border Patrol tear gassing them, so there's no need to really bring a lot of that equipment. But, you keep it. It's in your vehicle. It's in your backpack. It's always close. But, it's just a lot of protective equipment, literally. Like helmet, glasses, all that stuff. You just got to make sure you have it because you're going to need it sometimes, especially covering these federal raids, and especially how, in broad daylight, these federal agents can be tear gassing neighborhoods. And so, like, even just during that, like, protests or not protests, because a lot of these I wouldn't consider protests. It's just the neighborhood responding to the federal raids on that specific day. And, like, people are coming out of their houses, literally out of the front door, and then getting tear gas. And, like, that creates, I guess, a a sort of a protest response to the federal agents that just tear gassed, the neighborhood, which I would too if that was my house that was getting gassed. So in those environments, for sure, you got to make sure as a reporter, independent journalist, no matter who you are, you got to make sure you have the protective gear because you for sure are going to be subject to those munitions as anyone around there will be.
And Andrew, you posted last month about being threatened by Jaden Scott, that is a conservative online personality. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened, and was this something that happened for the first time for you?
Yeah, it definitely is. So, they've been at the Whipple building even prior to this, and even prior to Jake Lang getting kicked out of Minneapolis. They were up there, and even Status Coup was out there, and eventually everyone collectively just stopped even looking at him. Reporters too, because they were up there pacing the protests at the Whipple building for, weeks, Jaden Scott included, and no one was giving them attention. Like they'd get attention for maybe 5 minutes and then nothing after that. So over time, I'm still tracking after Jake Lang was kicked out of Minneapolis, I'm still tracking if they're coming back, and they had been because they've been harassing Boulevard Bar in West St. Paul. They had been harassing the staff there, and just, I don't like when people mess with my Minnesotans. I don't like when people from outside of the state come here and really and just try to mess with people. So I was just monitoring what they were doing. I had re-uploaded his video. He had said we were 5th generation warfare coming to Crusade, Minnesota or something. I don't know. And I had put it to a Sabrina Carpenter song. I thought it was, funny. I didn't edit it in any way.
Which one?
the one where he's got the, I don't know, they're mostly the same, but he's got the American flag and he's in his bunker. And I put it to Sabrina Carpenter and just kept it exactly how he said it. And all I said was the Temu Punishers are coming back to Minnesota. Apparently he didn't like that and showed up at my front door, right outside my door, and made a video. So, that was an escalation, certainly. So, it's a slippery slope. I want to joke and stuff about it too, because, I'm trying not to engage in political violence, right? Like I have my take, I have my opinion. I'm a journalist out there, but, I'm uploading his video to Sabrina Carpenter. I'm not showing up to Jaden Scott's front door. I'm not threatening him in his face. Like, you better get out of my state. I'm just filming what he's doing and then also having an opinion on it.
Well, JT, I'm wondering too, you talked earlier about authenticity and being a person that people can feel a connection to, which is sort of essential to the work that you're doing. But does that put you in a dangerous situation? Have you or your staff felt threatened while you've been on the ground here?
Specifically, well, what timing? We just today had an ICE agent pull over our cameraman, John Farina, who is on the ground there today, wanting to know if he was press and who he was with, and asking him a lot of invasive questions. And it's not the first time that has happened to John, because when he was on the ground in Charlotte, North Carolina, he had Border Patrol agents pull him over and threaten him and another journalist that he was riding with arrest for the work that they are doing. I'm lucky enough that, we have the the constant worry every time we go out to these scenes where the federal government is using tear gas, pepper spray, flashbang grenades, pepper balls that it's shooting directly at us. I was shot outside of the Whipple building myself with pepper balls. There's the danger to us in that regard with those weapons that the federal government has demonstrated a willingness to use on the people of Minnesota and on the journalists who are there to cover the story. But thankfully, I have not had anybody show up at my front door the way Andrew has.
Yeah. I want to go next to Jennifer in Pillager, who's been waiting so patiently. Jennifer, what do you want to share with us?
I just wanted to come and give a shout out to Andrew, firstly, because I have been watching him since day one, 2020, George Floyd, and I have seen him grow from a young man on the streets, in a situation that he's never experienced, to who he is today. To me, he's a legit journalist. He's somebody that I trust, and he is how I do my fact-checking between what's happening, in real life versus what I'm hearing on the media or what the administration is telling me, or us rather. And then also with NPR, between you two and then, all the other noise behind you guys, it's how I know what's true and what is affecting my family and friends that are still in St. Paul and Minneapolis, and how I know how to keep my family safe should they come up here. So.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We appreciate that. Ellie in Tacoma has also been waiting. Ellie, what do you want to share?
Hi. For the longest time, I didn't follow the news at all, and it was in 2016 with the Dakota Access Pipeline and Standing Rock that I actually got started actually following what's going on. And I started with following TYT and Secular Talk and those. And then when the Ukraine war started, I stumbled across Andrew Mercado's thing, and I distinctly remember him saying, sunflowers in the chat for Ukraine, and suddenly his chat was flooded with sunflowers. And so I remember that. And with the whole George Floyd thing, I found out that he had previously actually come up to Seattle with the whole CHOP thing up in Seattle and was up there for a little bit too. And I'm like, I like this guy. I like what he's got to say. I like what he's doing, and that he's basically just showing you what's happening and letting you form your own conclusions from that. And he's giving his opinion on it, but he's showing you what's really going on. And so he's kind of become one of my big go-tos as far as what's going on. And I'm over in Washington State. What's happening in Minnesota has a ripple effect across the country. There are ICE going after people in my hometown, in Tacoma, in Seattle, and in Portland, all over the country. It's not just one place. And people kind of seem to forget that when the news media focuses on like one place, it affects us all.
So it sounds like, Ellie, you're able to have a better sense of what's happening in your own community because you are able to get real-time information about what's happening in a place where this is, very front and center at the moment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And
Ellie, thank you very much. JT, Ellie rattled off the names of maybe some earlier pioneers of what you guys are doing now. And I'm just wondering, do you feel like your approach to media is you're building something entirely new, or are there websites or other independent journalists who were doing this, maybe a decade ago that you sort of look to as models for how you do your work now?
It's a little of both, right? We stand on the shoulders of giants. Like I've mentioned, my boss, Jordan Sheridan, Ellie there on the call was listing off that she watched, she got tuned into the news through what was happening with the Dakota Access Pipeline and watching the Young Turks. That was my boss, Jordan Sheridan, at the Young Turks, at Standing Rock, covering that. That is what she is referencing. So, Jordan built on what, the model that TYT had developed and, made tweaks to it and built Status Coup coming out of that. So, we have that sort of pedigree, but there's very few who are actually doing what we are doing now. I would, aside from the people on this call or here on this program right now, myself, Status Coup and Mercado Media, I'm sure that Andrew and I could put our heads together here and come up with a few other outlets that we would call out as doing the same sort of on the ground journalism. Luckily for Minneapolis and the Twin Cities, I think largely because of what happened with George Floyd, it boasts a much greater concentration of independent journalists than many other cities, certainly of its size. So we could come up with quite a few local examples, but.
Yeah, and I should just say too, one of our most prominent independent journalists, Georgia Fort, was arrested, for following a protest into a church. Does it put you at greater risk for legal action when you're working as an independent journalist?
Definitely, especially, Georgia Fort had just interviewed me about Jaden Scott the day prior to her being detained. It was like, and she had recommended to me, make sure you get legal support for this, get insurance for that. And because as independents, we don't have big corporate, money to support that. We don't have big legal departments to make sure, hey, or like a big editing team to make sure, hey, is this legal to put out or whatnot. We gotta like JT said, we gotta keep ourselves safe. So yes, it's a lot that goes into that, and it is a lot of stress, especially right now in this administration when they're targeting journalists for just being honest and just showing what's happening. And Georgia Ford is a multi-Emmy award-winning journalist, like one of the best journalists we have in the state, and she was detained. I mean, that's just completely wrong. And that's why it's more important for us to continue doing what we're doing.
I want to build off of what Andrew is just saying
go
there.
ahead. Yeah,
I want to build off what Andrew is just saying there, because Andrew seized on something very important, I think, which is that the idea that this administration is going after journalists, not only independent journalists like Georgia Fort, but also has, taken to task some corporate media outlets that it does not like, and has, forced changes or, payments from some of those news outlets. So they're going after everyone, which we've seen some media organizations kind of bend over backwards to try and placate the Trump administration, in my opinion. And I think that also lends quite a bit of authenticity to what Andrew and I do, is that despite that pressure from this administration to just, toe the party line, so to speak, or sane wash what they are attempting to do, because we continue to call out what is actually happening there on the ground, despite all of that pressure and the threat to us, I think goes a long way towards that sense of credibility towards us as journalists.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot as we've been talking. You pointed out that the Trump administration is, sort of skewering the work that you're doing. I feel like we can't have this conversation without talking about Nick Shirley, who is a conservative independent journalist that came to Minnesota earlier this year to investigate claims of fraud within a child care funding program that are unsubstantiated. He went to a number of some Somali-run daycares around the Twin Cities, and that video went viral, and it also got the attention of President Donald Trump, which, some people sort of draw a line between that video surfacing and the increase in federal agents here in the state. And I guess I'm just wondering if you see what you're doing as different from what, for instance, Nick Shirley was doing. And Andrew, I'll start with you there.
Yes, 100% different. I mean, this, for me, I've been watching Nick Shirley for years, back when he went to Kyiv, because again, I had covered Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and I had seen him go to Kyiv and lie about our taxpayer money and basically do exactly the type of propaganda he did here in Minnesota, but back in Ukraine. And it's like a frequent thing that I've noticed. But no, I mean, but also me and JT Cestkowski specifically were we were watching the increase in federal agents leading up to his video, because we had taken a break for Christmas break, and then Nick Shirley's video came out, and then I was on social media debunking it, as was JT with his social media. And it was like he just capitalized off of reporting that already existed on fraud that was held accountable from the top down. I mean, what worse do you want from jail time for everybody involved? And then he repackaged it as if like there's new fraud to find now, and like made this racial connotation towards the Somali people that they're fraudsters, and like just absolutely ignited more support, I guess, from people that wanted to support these ICE raids that were taking place. So he definitely poured gasoline on the fire that was already here in the Twin Cities with the Operation Metro Surge.
And JT, quickly, I'm curious to get your take on that. And then I want to try to fit one more call in before we have to end the show here. Go ahead, JT.
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing is incredibly different for all the reasons that Andrew just listed, and I would even point to again that point that I was making earlier about differentiating journalist sharing an opinion versus activist. Nick Shirley and some of the people in that same sort of right-wing content creator sphere who like to style themselves as journalists are actively calling on the administration to take certain actions in the Twin Cities area, like send in the troops and the like, or to arrest people for supposed fraud that is not actually, has not been substantiated. So I think it draws a very clear delineation between what activism looks like and what journalists like what myself and Andrew do.
effects.
Okay. All right. We have Matt in St. Paul who's been waiting patiently. Matt, what do you want to share with us?
I just want to thank these two gentlemen. First off, they're doing important work, and they are showing bravery, which is action in the face of fear. Because it can't be nice having a white supremacist fascist show up at your front door and make threats. But in the context of what they're doing in a time that, and this has been mentioned before, that there's a consolidation of power, and there has been a history of media in the United States kind of helping out with selling things such as the New York Times and the 2003 invasion of Iraq with weapons of mass destruction. And what we can get is a glimpse of what's actually happening. And they do provide important context that I value quite a bit in reporting on what we're seeing is like an imperial boomerang. That's all I wanted to say. And thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Matt. You know, we only have a little bit of time left here, but I wanted to ask you, Andrew, I mean, so many people have been watching your YouTube channel over the last couple of months who probably are not in Minnesota. What do you think people are learning about Minnesotans right now based on what you've been showing them?
They're learning resiliency. I mean, they're learning how to, I guess, fight back without physically fighting. Like, because, I mean, people are out there peacefully protesting. They're holding up signs. They're getting tear gas, flashbang. They're getting brutalized by the government, but yet they still are getting murdered by the government, and they're still continuing to show up. I mean, you know, a lot of us are diehard Vikings fans. You know what I mean? We're not giving up on what's going on out here. So no matter how bad it gets, and I think that's what Minnesotans are showing. I mean, we did this. We had a polar vortex. It was record cold. You know what I mean? Like all of the
quite cold.
Everything has been stacked against the Twin Cities. You know, but everywhere in Minnesota, because these ice raids have also been in the Iron Range. They've been down in Rochester. They've been all over the state.
Yeah.
But I think it's shown the resolve, the resiliency of Minnesota, and it's kind of shown the nation and the world, you know, how people have been able to stand up to this administration and kind of laid out the blueprint.
Well, thank you so much. Our time is up for tonight. I want to thank our guests. Andrew Mercado is the founder and editor-in-chief of Mercado Media, and JT Cestkowski is a reporter from Status Coup News. Thank you for joining me. This show was produced by Carrie Dwyer.